Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Mark Smith, coordinator of Checkmate, and Georgia Diebel, who's had a lifetime experience in the world of detecting cancer and looking at things. They've set up an Alderney-based organisation promoting cancer awareness. Good to see you both. Thank you very much for sparing me time.
You're welcome.
First question to you, Mark. Whose idea?
I think it's a collaborative thing. It follows on, you may recall, I set up the Alderney Male Uprising campaign about 2014.
Mm-hmm.
We ran a few successful campaigns, but the reality wasn't sustainable, and I don't think it reached enough people. So over time, I've been in touch with the local Cancer Research UK team, Jan Walker and her group, together with James Roberts from Alderney Cancer Relief. And we came together as a committee a number of months ago and said, right, now's the time to launch an Alderney Men's Health Awareness campaign, which we called Check It Out, Mate, for reasons which will become apparent later. So it's a collaboration, but the important thing is this is just the beginning, Tony.
Yeah.
We have ambitions to grow selectively. This is a tough area to garner support around in terms of finance, medical checks, and so on. But nonetheless, if you don't start, you don't get there. So we've made a good start.
That's good. And you've got some sponsors, and I think, if I were you, I'd be mentioning them at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, they're vital because we have met with considerable expense in order to be able to produce the leaflet, which has dropped through everybody's letterbox during this week, together with beer mats, which will follow soon to go into pubs and restaurants to promote awareness, that's the stuff, to promote conversations, not just amongst men, but friends and family, because this is often a community issue. It's not just about men. And also there are posters in over 100 establishments in Alderney. So if you're having a pee in a restaurant, you'll be looking at Check It Out, Mate. To be able to do that, we've had support from Alderney Cancer Relief, Cancer Research UK. The Fort Group have been extremely generous. Blanchard, Rotary International in Alderney, Guernsey Post, who delivered everything free of charge for us. Alderney Electricity are always open to providing support for local community affairs. PricewaterhouseCoopers, Channel Islands, and last but not least, and vitally so, the Ireland Medical Centre, who will be providing ongoing support in terms of consultation. Last but not least, I would also like to add the Community Assistance Fund, which is the States of Alderney initiative. As far as I can work out, the administration of that will be the States of Alderney Treasury, but there is an independent panel of people who are very happy to receive applications for people who need assistance in order that they can have a consultation with a doctor. Another way of putting it is we want people to get checked out if they feel there's an issue. We don't want finance to be an inhibitor. So we have ourselves made a contribution towards that fund, hopefully to make sure that over the next year and in future years, people can avail themselves of a consultation and, if necessary, treatment down the line.
Yeah, just to make it clear for our overseas English viewers, the situation in Alderney is that to have a consultation with the local doctor, the GP, costs about £50, but the secondary care is taken over by the states of Guernsey. But nevertheless, for a lot of people, 50 quid's still a lot of money to find. And I think from the point of view of what you're suggesting here, it's got to make a lot of sense. Coming on to you, Georgia. What are the statistics these days of male and female cancers? I've sort of done a little bit of research. It looks as if it could be 1 in 3 or even more. Is that correct?
It is, Tony, yes. So statistically, for people who are born after 1960, we will see 1 in 2 people developing a cancer at some point in their lifetime. One of the things I've been urging everyone to understand here is that we don't want this to be a scary subject, because there's an awful lot that people can do to understand their risks and the situation. And we're sort of trying to introduce it with imagery and ideas that get people talking and having the conversation. Because cancer is so common now, we're all going to be impacted in some way or another, if it's ourselves or a family member or friends. And cancer statistics show that since the 1970s, survival has doubled in the UK. So we've got much better with the research, finding treatments that are slightly kinder. They have to be harsh in a way to kill the cancer off, but we're much better at treating cancers. And the vital thing about this campaign is that we know a person who gets cancer will have a better outcome if they're diagnosed early. So that's sort of the key message in this campaign. There's more than one, but the key message is don't sit on a symptom and not get it checked. So that's where the check it out mate comes from.
And it's almost up to a point, prevention's better than cure, because, you know, if you identify these things at a very early stage, then it's a lot easier for the medical people to sort you out. But a lot of people seem to have a big fear, and it just goes on and on and on. And before they know where they are, they've gone past the point of no return, and that's very sad.
Yeah, about just over half of the cancers that we diagnose in the UK are diagnosed at an early stage. So that's known as stage 1 or 2. But we're trying to shift that nationally to 75% diagnosed at stage 1 or 2, because that will undoubtedly improve our outcomes. But as you say, prevention is better than cure. We know that 4 in 10 cancers could be prevented through our lifestyle. So smoking, unfortunately, is the biggest cause of cancer. It causes 15 different types. So when somebody breathes in the smoke, it's not just going into their lungs, it affects all parts of the body. And being overweight or obese causes 13 different types of cancer. Alcohol contributes to 7 different types of cancer. So you can see sort of how it magnifies.
Yeah. And I mean, I suppose even if you were on a perfect lifestyle, you could still get it, couldn't you?
You could, yeah. That's a really valid point. So often people say, oh, you know, I'll take my chances. There is an element of we are who we are. Genetically, we're made the way we're made. But genetic risk in families, so for it to be passed on, is actually relatively low. It's somewhere between 10 and 20%. And the lifestyle is 4 in 10 cancers. But certainly there are cancers we can't prevent. So finding them early is key.
I think, just to interject and reinforce the point, though, whilst our focus is about men's health, this is about everyone. But why men? Well, there are no really established screening programs other than bowel cancer, and that's limited to quite a small age group. But also men are quite, well, at least they're labelled, have been pretty much useless of identifying symptoms, or more importantly, actually doing something about it. So it's right now to address that issue and try and mobilise people.
It's a bit macho, isn't it? Or can be.
Yeah, I don't know.
It ain't going to happen to me. And, you know, before you know where you are, it has happened, unfortunately. But can we look, both of you, at the various points that are addressed actually in the Checkmate leaflet? So I'm following down, you know, the pages that were, and the first one is bowel cancer, more common in over 50s. Checks to make, Georgia.
Tony, in terms of bowel cancer risk, it is more common in people over 50, but it can occur younger.
Yeah.
And it's men and women. So in terms of checking or being aware of your own body, it's thinking about your normal bowel habit and if something changes. And if it changes over a sustained period of time, or you notice that you've got a lump in your tummy or a discomfort, it's getting that pain checked.
Yeah.
A change in bowel habit, so developing diarrhea for no reason, constipation for no reason. So any change in bowel habit that isn't normal for you, it's worth getting it checked. That's symptoms, but we also have a screening program. So there's sort of two different things. Mark was mentioning about the screening program, which is for everybody, men and women, in the bailiwick, aged between 60 and 70. A kit arrives in the post when it's your turn. And, Mark can testify to this.
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't mind saying on camera.
No, not at all. I mean, out of the blue a couple of weeks ago, bearing in mind I'm going to be 66 soon, so you would have thought this would have occurred before, but for the first time, sure enough, I opened the envelope, I sent off a sample, and I've been given a negative.
Good.
Now, I had no symptoms, I had no reason not to, but I did feel a sense of relief that for the first time in my life, I've been screened for something that could be very serious.
Yeah. As an old age whatnot, I'm obviously ineligible for that one. But
I guess we would say, Tony, in terms of picking up a screening program aims to pick it up when it's most likely. So
yeah, sure.
If you're past the screening age, it's watching out for those unexplained changes, or if you have unexplained weight loss, it may not be bowel cancer, but unexplained weight loss is a key symptom to take to the doctor.
And to reassure everybody, I mean, it's basically a poo test that you have to do. It's not invasionary or anything like that.
No, it was a sample. It's very easy to do. There is absolutely no reason why people wouldn't respond. It's a prepaid return envelope, and I had the news well within the 10-day specified period that you could expect to have a result. And further confirmation that in 2 years' time, the process will be repeated. So it's a really good cycle of events.
And Georgie, can you just explain polyps in this context?
Yes. So inside the bowel, you have the lining of the bowel, and a polyp is a little bit like a skin tag inside the bowel. And those skin tags, when they're really, really minor, are not a problem at all. But if they're left over a long period of time, they can become cancerous. So the reason they're looking for the blood in the poo sample is that the polyps the polyps bleed, and so if they bleed, that shows in the poo before they're ever cancerous. So this is where you prevent bowel cancer, because the polyps are removed by a fairly straightforward procedure, and that takes away the risk of cancer. So that's a really positive way of preventing bowel cancer developing.
Okay, so it's done surgically, is it, as opposed to having to take chemotherapy and this sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. Polyps aren't cancerous; they're pre-cancerous growth.
Okay, yeah.
So you don't even have an operation; it's a procedure rather than an operation. It's called a colonoscopy.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
it's the camera type of procedure, and they snip them out. And some people watch them doing it on the camera. So,
but blindfolds are available.
Blindfolds and music and headphones are available. Yeah.
Let's move on to testicular cancer, which appears to be more common in the 25 to 49 bracket. Checks to make on that one.
So, Tony, this is a much less common cancer overall. We've included it because it's specific to men, but it's not one of the big four like the bowel, lung, and prostate are. We've put testicular cancer in because of the male association, and this is a self-examination. So in the leaflet, it's suggesting there's a link through to a website called It's in the Bag. Is a Southwest England based charity, and they have a really good video animation about how to self-examine on a monthly basis. And the drinks mats that we're waiting for on the boat has a QR code that takes you straight through to that video. And so we would really urge young men to, from the age of about 15, to check every month, just to feel the shape and the size of the testicles. Do it after they've had a shower, roll each testicle around and check it for any lumps or bumps.
Yeah.
It's quite normal in the course of somebody's normal lifespan to have a cyst or something like that, but any lump or bump should be checked. And sort of checking all your tackle is a good idea. So not just limiting it to the testicles, but looking at the penis and making sure that everything looks normal there. That's a very rare cancer, but any change on the skin on the penis should be checked.
Yeah, okay, we'll bear that in mind. Coming on to skin cancer now, moles, etc. I mean, I suppose we've all suffered from overexposure to the sun at one time or other in our lifetime. So you've just got to be a bit careful. I had one here that Dr. Cooper removed, and you know, it was quite reassuring because he sort of fairly generous in terms of the slicing procedure. So there was quite a bit of good stuff that went down to Guernsey together with the cancerous bit. And you know, as far as he was concerned, he came back and said, right, there's, you know, it's clear, we've got rid of it. So there we are. But look, I think it's important though that a lot of people do look at their skin.
Yeah, Tony, what made you look at what happened on your head there? Was
it was just a sort of, yeah, it was a sort of lump that I kept scratching. And generally speaking, if you scratch it, it should heal and go away. Well, in this case, it didn't. And so we decided, you know, that it would be sensible to go and see Jonathan. And let's face it, he's really hot stuff when it comes to skin and stuff like that. And he was able to identify it straight away and say, right, well, we really need to do that. Did an excellent job of stitching me up as well.
Yeah, I must say, actually, I had something investigated. It was something, it was nothing. But I do find when I go online and you get photographs of what may be a sinister lump, can I call it? I actually find those photographs not at all helpful.
No.
That's just a personal opinion. This leads me to say, go and see somebody like Dr. Cooper because he knows. He can very, very quickly identify if there's something at work there or not.
Yeah. All those years of experience with Jonathan really pay off as far as we're concerned. So that's good.
I'm sure it's the case with all of the doctors. I single him out because he was the one who reassured me that, no, that's just a blood blister, basically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Here, Tony, what you described is a classic scenario. Something's itching. So the itching is, so something that persistently itches, the edges of it get a bit wobbly. So the form of it changes. And the other important thing is that it doesn't heal. If it doesn't heal, that's really a sign as well. The same for in the mouth. So mouth cancers are more common in people who smoke and drink. And if you have an ulcer in the mouth, that's still skin. It's still, you know, so a dentist would refer someone if they saw something that wasn't healing. So the same for the mouth and for anywhere in the body. Where you can't see yourself, ask someone to take some photos of your back or, you know, the backs of your legs. Body map yourself. So, you know, if you've got one that looks a bit funny, take a photo of it. So many people have got mobile phones now, because when you go to the doctor, you've got what it was like, what it's changed to.
No, that's a very good idea. And of course, most dentists will look at the soft tissue in your mouth, won't they, as part of the checkup procedure these days. So that's important. We've already talked about lung cancer in terms of causes, smoking, etc., which it seems really bad in terms of the fact that lung cancer can create all these, would you call them secondaries?
So lung cancer is one type of primary cancer. So cancer can spread to other parts of the body, but you can get a primary cancer from smoking in your bladder, in your bowel. It can be attributed to breast cancer, cervical cancer in women. So smoking is the big issue. If we're thinking specifically around lung cancer, it's the biggest cause of lung cancer, smoking, but that doesn't mean that non-smokers never get lung cancer. There are unfortunately a small proportion of people who do, and the risk from them may be some genetic mutation or environment, something they've been exposed to. Cancer comes along when our DNA changes.
Yeah.
So normally our bodies our immune system deals with changes in DNA, but sometimes it just can't. So, it's very difficult, I think, for people with a lung cancer where it's not smoking, because they think, well, what's caused it? And they may not find out what the cause is. It's a mutation.
And it wasn't that long ago that we were sort of breathing in secondhand smoke in restaurants and pubs and things like that, which obviously doesn't do you much good. So, it is a matter of concern. Have you got any views on vaping? Or is it too soon?
That's a very good question. In terms of saying, is it too soon? I think we know that e-cigarettes sort of have been in the popular sort of arena for about a decade now, a little bit more. And when we look at the chemicals in smoking cigarettes and the chemicals in e-cigarettes, so vaping, it's a lot less. So if you look to an organisation like Cancer Research UK, where anything that they publish is very heavily evidence-based, they would say, don't start vaping because we don't know enough about it to know how safe or unsafe it is. But it's definitely safer than smoking. We've got a problem in that children and teenagers are starting to vape, and we don't know what damage it's going to do them.
Yeah.
But if we've got people who are smoking already, vaping is a good step in trying to stop, because it's not as toxic as smoking.
Yeah.
But I would never say start vaping and start using e-cigarettes. But if you're trying to cut down on the cigarettes, it may help. The best way to stop smoking is to get support to do it. They know that if you go cold turkey and try to do it on your own, people aren't as successful. Yeah. Paul, I spoke to Paul at the pharmacy, and they have a smoking cessation service there. So we'd really encourage anyone to pick up on that service.
Yeah. Because, even with vaping, you're still introducing foreign matter into your lungs, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's just as an aside, it's curious to me, because if you're stood and you're buying a newspaper and you look across the shelf, there seems to be a flavor for everything.
Yeah.
And what is it in the human mind that says, today I'm going raspberry? I really don't get it.
Could I say STUPIDITY?
Yeah. Well, that kind of defines the human race. And
yeah.
It's an interesting niche, this thing.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the problem there, of course, is that's what's appealing to children. Bubblegum flavor and all this sort of stuff. And that's, I mean, I was listening today to radio station, and they were talking about it and talking about these various flavors and things like that. But they seem to be concerned that a lot of youngsters were getting hooked onto it. And so there we are. Yeah.
It's because of the nicotine, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Nicotine is the addictive bit, and once they're hooked on the nicotine, the flavor is a easy way. But so the final message on that really is that e-cigarettes aren't risk-free.
Yeah.
So we don't know the full evidence on it. And also the other thing that I would say is that not all outlets sell legal supplies of e-cigarettes. So buying them off the back of a van or cheaply via someone, you're probably not getting a safe, in inverted commas, product.
Yeah. Let's get on to prostate, because that's basically for men over 50, and the risk gets greater with age. I go for a blood test twice a year, and they're very good, and they do a PSA for me as part of that blood test. What are your views on that?
So it's a hot potato, Tony. The PSA is, just to explain to people who are listening or watching, It's a measurement of an antigen in a man's blood. So men have PSA in their blood all the time, and it's normal to have PSA. As you get older, the reference range that doctors look at for PSA shifts a little bit because the prostate changes in shape and size once you get to 50 and older. So a lot of men have an enlarged prostate that pushes out a bit more PSA into your system. So it isn't a cancer test. It's an indicator that there may be something different with your prostate than it used to be. So it isn't the be all and end all, but it is the only test we have at sort of primary care level, so in the GP practice, other than doing a rectal examination where the GP can feel part of the prostate. So it is useful. The reason we haven't got a screening test is that we haven't got a screening program nationally, is that it's not a reliable test at a population level.
Yeah.
So for somebody like yourself, where you've had one and then you have another one, the doctor can compare one test and then look at the next one and see if it's changed. But at a population level, it's not reliable enough.
No.
You've obviously had a reason to have it done, and the choice is very much down to each individual man over 50. That's what the sort of government guidelines are.
Yeah.
Be informed about it and make your choice.
Yeah.
Just
to fill you in, I mean, it was just, we can't exactly call it curiosity, but wanting to know. That's why I started doing them. And as you know, there's a range of highs and lows, and I seem to sort of fit into the middle somewhere on that. And presumably, you know, when they do this comparison, if they sort of suddenly see it going up the wrong way, they will then call you in, and they can at that stage think positively in terms of trying to remedy it. What's the operation?
Oh, Tony, just before that, can I just introduce, because actually over the course of the last month or so, held quite a number of conversations with Georgia on this, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
But when I mentioned right at the outset that this is the beginning of a longer term campaign, this is an area I think that can get greater clarity. The reason being I say that is I have seen doctors over the years. When I was working in the city, I would have an annual, a PSA was part of that. Okay. Now, I've never had an issue. But I have always been warned, and in particular in recent years, well, Mark, why do you want that? Have you any symptoms? No, is the answer, okay? The curiosity, and others will say, no, absolutely do. And the curiosity is such that I always say, no, I'd like to have it because if I'm not aware, I'd like to become aware.
Yes.
What has been hanging over is the bit that you're coming on to is, so if you've got a raised PSA, what happens next? Or skipping across what happens next, which Georgia will be able to explain better. Be aware, Male Uprising Guernsey, and we contributed from here, actually now has a prostate-specific scanner.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, now, as far as I know, well, I didn't know this, and yet I was writing to them with donations. So we need to join up the dots somehow.
Very much so.
But returning, I think, Georgia.
Yeah, what about the procedure, Georgia? What sort of procedure is involved?
So, Tony, if there was an indication that someone needed to have further investigations, it's a bit like a jigsaw trying to decide if somebody's got various types of cancer. But with prostate cancer, the first one is the PSA test and the examination to feel the part of the prostate that can be felt through the back passage. If the GP here wanted to refer someone on to Guernsey, it's as Mark says, they would go over, and there's a new way of using an MRI scanner to visualize the prostate. So they get a much better map, is the best way to describe it. So it's a little bit like an ordnance survey map image that they get. And they're now able to identify changes within the prostate that would be the right ones to target to see if there's any cancer there. So the prostate generally is about the size of a walnut, but it may be a bit bigger as men get older. And if they see any changes, they would need to biopsy for those changes.
Yeah.
But they would only determine that when they've looked at the MPMRI scan, so this very special scan. And those have only come into place in very recent years. And there's just very recently, in the last month or so, been a study released from a very significant London teaching hospital where they're really up on prostate cancer, where they're looking at the potential for this to be part of a bigger program. So there are things on the horizon around ways to monitor men with their prostate. If they do find that they need to biopsy, they have to put the needle through and take the samples out. And then from there, they grade the type of cancer that it is, because prostate cancer has many different guises. And the sort of layman's term for prostate cancer is, have you got a pussycat or a tiger?
Yeah.
So you have a very lazy prostate cancer. It may never need treating. And men can be monitored, and they call it active surveillance. So a lot of men never actually have to have radical treatment. But there are a proportion of men who do need more aggressive treatment, and there's a wide choice of options. There's surgery to remove it, radiotherapy. They don't use chemotherapy if they catch it early. They use chemotherapy later. And they can put radioactive seeds into the prostate as well. So there's a plethora of treatments, in fact. So anyone who's considering needing treatment, I would certainly signpost them to Prostate Cancer UK's helpline. The specialist nurses there are excellent at explaining treatment options.
That's useful. Now, can we just round off, excuse me, by saying, what about the ladies? What about the females? Is there any intention to come up with female type advice?
Well, that hasn't been part of the narrative.
No.
But only because we've had a focus on this occasion.
Yes.
We have begun to discuss what the next step should be and try to prioritize. But we'll only know that, I would say, later this year, perhaps.
Yeah.
And we have deliberately, and you will have seen on the leaflet that you have, that quite deliberately, Georgia put in the skeleton of a male and female, identified both. So this is not about cancelling out for females, but it is the case that females have had breast and cervical cancer testing screening for some time. And we're now embarking on, hopefully, a program whereby, and this is going to be a long road, whereby the types of treatment types that George has just introduced become mainstream, insofar as it is possible. At the end of the day, it's money.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I think it's important to say you have to have the evidence alongside the money. So I think that, that's where organisations like Cancer Research UK are leading the way, not just nationally but globally. Particularly prostate cancer is a real focus. It would be irresponsible to introduce a screening program that causes more harm than good, and that's the due diligence of the National Screening Committee. They have to make the judgment call on that, and that's why we haven't had a screening program to date. But with the MPMRI scan, the landscape is changing, so the horizon is looking slightly different.
In terms of fundraising, I, along with many others, I expect, who travel out of Southampton Airport, have been approached by a really energetic and helpful team who have been asking for people to, and I go on a monthly subscription, I have done for a long, long time now. One of the benefits arising from that is at least weekly I receive news in the areas that we've just been discussing about where progress is being made. So you actually actively see where your money is being put to good use, which may not benefit me, but hopefully it will benefit somebody else down the road. I mean, our strapline really is, Tony, if this campaign allows a person to catch a cancer early and the outcome is really positive, that's enough. But we hope it'll reach more people over time.
On that positive note, can I thank you both very much for sparing me some time? I really enjoyed talking about it because it's a bit of a taboo subject, but many, many thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for
Tony.
putting it out. We need the publicity, so go for it.